The night Vivian Cross promised to marry Daniel Whitmore, her daughter pointed across the marble ballroom and said, "No, I trust him." She wasn't pointing at the man in the tailored navy suit, the one with the perfect smile and the diamond ring waiting in his palm. She was pointing at me, Nathaniel Price, the black caretaker standing beside a service door with soil on my boots and a folded maintenance checklist half hidden in my hand. Most people in that room saw what they expected to see: hired help. Quiet hands, somebody paid to keep the estate pretty and stay invisible. But Vivian's little girl had seen something else. And before that night was over, that folded paper would expose 3 years of warnings Daniel had buried. Before I tell you what I found on that estate, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read more comments than you think. But to understand why this mattered, you need to know who I was before that night. My name is Nathaniel Price, and before that night in Vivian Cross's ballroom, most people knew me as the man who kept the Cross estate running. I fixed irrigation lines before sunrise, trimmed hedges after rain, changed filters in the greenhouse, cleared storm drains, patched old brick paths, and listened to machines before they got loud enough for rich people to notice. That was the part of my work nobody saw. If a gate opened smooth, if a fountain ran clean, if a child could walk barefoot across the back lawn without stepping on broken glass, then I had done my job right. I was 43 years old, and I lived in a small rented house 12 minutes from the estate with my niece, Sage. Sage was 12, though some mornings she looked 8 when she slept curled around her old green gardening journal, and some afternoons she sounded 30 when she reminded me tomatoes needed patience, not pressure. My younger sister, Rochelle, had died 4 years earlier from complications after a surgery that was supposed to be routine. She left behind one daughter, 2 plastic bins of clothes, and a handwritten note asking me to keep Sage near living things. So I did. Every Saturday, we worked on a little wooden planter box behind our house. Sage kept notes in that journal like she was running a farm nobody else could see. Soil mix, water schedule, which seeds failed, which ones surprised us. One morning, before everything changed, I stood at the bathroom sink washing grease out of the lines in my hands. The mirror over that sink had a crack across the lower corner, and when I looked down, my palms seemed older than the rest of me. Small scars, dark oil under the nails, a burn mark from a boiler pipe that gave way 2 winters back. Those hands had buried my sister. Those hands had signed school forms. Those hands had learned to braid hair badly, then better. Those hands had held bills up to the kitchen light like staring hard enough might make numbers change. Sage came to the doorway wearing one sock and holding her journal against her chest. "Uncle Nate," she said, "do plants know when somebody's mean to them?" I turned off the faucet. Plants know when they're not cared for, I told her. She thought about that like it mattered more than breakfast. Then she nodded once and said, "Then people probably know too." That was Sage. Not wise like a movie kid, just quiet in a way that made adults uncomfortable. At the Cross estate, Vivian's daughter, Lily, had that same kind of quiet. 8 years old, big eyes, always watching before speaking. She loved the greenhouse more than the mansion, and she trusted me mostly because I never forced her to talk. I took pride in that. Not loud pride, just the kind a man feels when a child feels safe enough to stand near him. But when Daniel Whitmore started visiting the estate more often, Lily stopped coming to the greenhouse alone. At first, I told myself it wasn't my place to notice. That was my first mistake. Vivian Cross didn't look like the kind of woman who missed things. She ran cross-meridian holdings from the top floor of a glass building downtown, and people said she could read a contract the way some folks read weather. At the estate, she moved through rooms without wasting motion. Navy dress, pearl earrings, phone in one hand, coffee in the other, a staff member always 2 steps behind, trying not to breathe too loud. But grief has a way of making even smart people tired. Her husband had died 5 years earlier, and from what little I heard around the property, Vivian had been raising Lily while running a company that expected her to be steel every morning. Daniel Whitmore fit into that tiredness like a polished key. He was calm, educated, well-dressed, the kind of man who remembered donors' names and never raised his voice where cameras could hear. The first time he spoke to me, I was kneeling near the west fountain, clearing leaves from the intake grate. "You're the groundsman?" he asked. I wiped my hands on a rag and stood. "Caretaker," I said. He smiled like I had corrected grammar at a funeral. "Right, caretaker." He looked past me toward the greenhouse, where Lily stood behind the glass with both hands wrapped around a watering can. When she saw him, her shoulders tightened. Not much, just enough. Daniel noticed me noticing. "She's shy," he said. I didn't answer. That was one thing about rich houses: people often explained children instead of listening to them. A week later, Vivian hosted a donor dinner at the estate. Caterers moved through the kitchen like a quiet army. Black cars rolled up the front drive. Music drifted from the ballroom, soft piano under expensive laughter. I was there late because the greenhouse temperature sensor had started throwing false readings, and Lily's orchids couldn't take another cold night. Near the service hallway, I heard Daniel telling one of the guests, "Vivian has been carrying too much alone. Lily needs structure, stability." Then he lowered his voice. "And frankly, fewer attachments to staff." The guest chuckled politely. I kept walking. The words didn't cut because they were loud. They cut because he said them like housekeeping. Later, Vivian found me adjusting the sensor panel outside the greenhouse. "Mr. Price," she said, "I appreciate how kind you've been to Lily, but Daniel thinks some boundaries may help her transition." Some boundaries. I looked through the glass. Lily was sitting at the potting bench, pretending not to listen. "Yes, ma'am," I said. Vivian's face changed for half a second. Not regret exactly. Doubt. Like a woman who had repeated someone else's sentence and heard it wrong only after it left her mouth. Then Daniel stepped out behind her and placed his hand gently at the center of her back. "Vivian," he said, "the guests are waiting." She turned away. I went back to the sensor panel. That was when I saw the service camera log on the small maintenance screen. 3 entries had been overwritten. Same hour. Same west greenhouse door. And Daniel's name was attached to none of them. That estate wasn't just holding a party. It was holding something else. I didn't touch the camera log right away. That's something people get wrong about maintenance work. You don't start yanking wires just because a screen shows something strange. You look first. You listen. You let the system tell you where it's hurting. The Cross estate had 12 exterior cameras, 4 gate sensors, 2 greenhouse thermostats, and an old access control panel that should have been replaced years earlier. It was good equipment once, but rich houses are funny. They'll spend 6 figures on flowers for one evening and argue over updating a panel that protects their child. I opened the service cabinet beside the greenhouse and checked the backup battery first. No swelling. No leak. Voltage was steady. Then I checked the Ethernet run. No chew marks. No moisture. No loose connector. The thermostat sensor was fine too. That bothered me. A bad sensor throws messy errors, random spikes, gaps, repeated faults. This wasn't messy. This was clean. Too clean. 3 camera entries were missing from the west greenhouse door between 6:12 and 6:19 p.m. The access panel still showed the door had opened. The magnetic contact had recorded it, but the camera system acted like nothing happened. Machines don't lie. People teach them how. I copied the service timestamps into my notebook, then closed the panel before anyone came looking. That was my habit. Maybe my flaw, too. I kept things quiet until I was sure. I told myself that was discipline. Sometimes it was fear, wearing a better shirt. The next morning, Sage sat at our kitchen table with cereal going soft in her bowl, taping a torn page back into her greenhouse journal. "You're doing that crooked," I said. She looked down at it and shrugged. "Still holds." I almost smiled. Quiet pride hit me in the chest then. Small and strange. That child had learned from me without me noticing. Fix it if you can. Keep it useful. Don't throw away something just because it tore. At the estate, Lily was waiting near the greenhouse steps. She had a small yellow flower tucked in her fist, crushed at the stem. "Mr. Nate," she whispered, "if somebody says they're helping, but your stomach hurts when they come close, is that rude?" I crouched so I wasn't standing over her. "No," I said. "That's your body asking you to pay attention." She nodded, but her eyes moved past me. Daniel was crossing the lawn. His smile appeared before he got close, like he had put it on for the walk. "Lily," he called gently, "your mother's looking for you." She stepped behind me without thinking. Daniel saw it, so did I. His eyes dropped to the notebook in my hand. "Something wrong with the greenhouse again?" he asked. "Just routine checks." "Good," he said. "Vivian doesn't need more problems right now." He said it softly, almost kindly. But I heard the warning underneath. That afternoon, I went back to the panel and compared the access timestamps with the manual maintenance sheet hanging inside the cabinet. One line had been rewritten in a different pen. Same date, same hour. Different handwriting. Machines don't lie. Something here wasn't just broken, it was wrong. The rewritten line bothered me more than the missing video. Video can fail. Servers can hiccup. Old systems do strange things when heat builds inside a cabinet. But handwriting tells you somebody stood there long enough to change the story. I waited until the estate quieted down. Around 4:30, the caterers were gone. Vivian was in a board call, and Daniel had taken Lily inside for what he called family time. I didn't like that phrase. Not from him. Not yet. I unlocked the greenhouse and went straight to the west bench, where Lily kept her little pots of basil and lavender. The air smelled wet and green, the way it always did after the misting heads kicked on. I checked the thermostat housing first, then the humidity controller, then the wire channel running behind the potting shelves. Nothing. Then I saw Lily's gardening journal tucked under a seed tray. It had a pale blue cover with pressed flower stickers on the front. The corners were soft from use. I almost left it alone because children deserve one place adults don't search. But a folded edge stuck out near the back, and it wasn't notebook paper. It was a maintenance checklist. Old, cream-colored, folded twice, soft at the creases. I opened it carefully. The top line had my handwriting, West Greenhouse Sensor Reset. 3 years earlier. Before Daniel was part of the house. Before Vivian started wearing that tired look all the time. But beneath my notes, somebody had added dates in pencil. March 14th, June 2nd, September 18th, December 6th. Every date had a tiny mark beside it. Not words, just one small dot and a line, like a child making a private code. I knew those dates. Not all at once. Recognition came slow. March 14th was the day Lily got locked outside near the service gate. June 2nd was when someone reported a broken greenhouse latch. September 18th was when the West camera failed during a charity event. December 6th was the night Lily refused to ride home with Daniel and hid behind the laundry room door until her nanny found her. I stared at that paper until the greenhouse sounds got too loud. Water ticking through pipes, fan belt humming, leaves brushing glass. Only somebody who worked this property would know those dates mattered. Only somebody who understood maintenance would know a sensor reset sheet was the safest place to hide a warning, because nobody important ever read those twice. A voice behind me said, "That doesn't belong to you." Daniel stood in the doorway. He wasn't smiling now. I folded the paper once, slow. "Found it under the tray," I said. "That child collects things, receipts, tags, scraps. You know how children are." "I do." He stepped inside, careful not to let his shoes touch the wet soil near the drain. "You should give that to me," he said. I looked at his hand. He didn't say, "Please." "From the house?" Vivian's voice called Lily's name. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the sound, then back to the paper. That was when I saw it. The last pencil mark at the bottom. Not a date. A name. D. Whitmore. I didn't give Daniel the checklist. I slid it into the inside pocket of my work jacket and walked past him like I had a broken valve to fix somewhere else. He didn't stop me. Men like Daniel don't make scenes unless they already control the room. That evening, I should have called Vivian. I knew that. I sat in my truck outside the estate with the paper in my pocket and my phone in my hand. Her number was in the staff directory. One tap and I could have told her about the dates, the missing camera entries, the way Lily stepped behind me when Daniel crossed the lawn. But then I thought about my job. I thought about rent. I thought about Sage's school shoes, the dental bill folded under a magnet on our fridge, and the way people like me get called dramatic when we notice things people with money don't want noticed. So I drove home. That was my flaw. I called it patience. I called it being careful. Truth was, I had spent too many years surviving by not stepping outside my place. Sage was at the kitchen table when I came in, her gardening journal open beside a paper cup full of bean sprouts. She had taped another page badly, crooked as a back road. "You're late," she said. "I know. You forgot the soil mix." I closed my eyes for half a second. I did. She didn't fuss. That made it worse. After dinner, she carried the little wooden planter box to the porch and set it between us. The summer air in Savannah was thick enough to lean on. Mosquitoes tapped against the screen. Somewhere down the street, somebody's dog barked like he had important business. Sage pressed one finger into the soil. "Uncle Nate," she said, not looking at me. "When Mama left me with you, did you want me?" The question hit harder because she asked it soft. I turned toward her. "Sage, I'm not saying you don't now." She swallowed. "I just mean, at first. There are moments when a child hands you a wound you didn't know you had given them." I had been so busy keeping food on the table, keeping lights on, keeping everything useful and fixed and moving, that I had never told her the simple thing. "I was scared," I said, "but yes, I wanted you. I still do. Every day." She nodded, but she kept looking at the soil. That quiet pride I carried in being dependable suddenly felt thin. A man can show up every day and still leave something unsaid too long. The next morning, Daniel found me by the equipment shed. "You care about children," he said. I kept winding a hose. That's good. Admirable. Really? But caring doesn't make you family. I looked at him then. His voice stayed smooth. Vivian is under enormous pressure. Lily is confused. You pushing strange ideas into that child's head would hurt everyone, including your niece. There it was. Not a threat with teeth showing. A threat wearing cologne. He stepped closer. Stay in maintenance, mister. Price. It's honorable work. I thought of Sage asking if I had wanted her. I thought of Lily hiding behind me. And still, for one more day, I said nothing. The day everything broke open, Vivian had invited a small circle of board members and family friends to the estate for what Daniel called a private commitment ceremony. Not a wedding yet, just public enough to make backing out embarrassing. I was in the greenhouse before sunrise, checking the west door latch. The screws were new. Too new. Different head pattern, stainless steel instead of the old brass ones used everywhere else on that frame. Whoever replaced them wanted the latch to look repaired, not inspected. I removed one screw and saw the wood beneath it. Fresh splintering. Not from age, from force. I took a photo, then checked the access panel. The west door had opened at 6:14 p.m. on December 6th. The camera file was gone, but the door contact still remembered. Then I checked the backup relay in the service cabinet. Old systems have habits. They forget video, but they remember power interruptions. There it was. A 7-second manual override. I printed the relay log from the little thermal printer in the shed. The paper came out curled and gray, but the numbers were clear. 6:14:22. West Greenhouse entry. 6:14:29. Camera signal interrupt. 6:14:36. Manual reset. 3 separate actions, not a glitch. By noon, Daniel found me near the service hall. "You been busy?" he said. "I work here." "No," he said. "You've been investigating here." He had Vivian with him. Her face looked tight, controlled, but her eyes kept moving from me to the paper in my hand. Daniel turned to her before I could speak. "This is exactly what I warned you about. He's attached to Lily. She's attached to him. Now he's building a story out of maintenance errors because he doesn't want boundaries." It was a good argument. That was the ugly part. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He sounded reasonable, protective, almost tired. A few staff members nearby slowed down without meaning to. For 30 seconds, I could feel the room leaning his way. Vivian looked at me. "Mr. Price," she said. "Is that true?" I took out the folded checklist and the relay printout. "No, ma'am." Daniel laughed once, quiet. A child scribbles and old machine data. Not just that. I placed the latch screw on the console table. That screw wasn't here in December. The hole beneath it was forced open, then covered. Somebody opened the greenhouse door, cut the camera signal, reset the panel, and changed the written maintenance line after. Daniel's jaw moved. Vivian whispered, "Why?" For the first time, Daniel's calm cracked. "Because you were drowning," he said. "Because every nanny, driver, tutor, and groundskeeper had an opinion about your daughter. Because Lily needed structure, and you needed a life that didn't revolve around fear." "That doesn't answer me," Vivian said. Daniel looked at Lily, standing halfway behind the ballroom doorway. "She was never in danger," he said. "I just needed her to stop running to him every time I entered a room." The silence after that didn't fall. It hardened. Then Lily stepped forward, lifted one trembling hand, and pointed straight at me. "He didn't tell me to be scared," she said. "He told me to listen when I already was." And in that moment, the truth was clear. The only question left was whether I would protect my job or protect the child who had finally spoken. Nobody moved after Lily spoke. Daniel looked at her like she had betrayed him, but he was too smart to let anger show fully. Vivian reached for her daughter, then stopped halfway, as if she finally understood Lily might not want another adult deciding where she belonged. I stood with the checklist in one hand and the relay printout in the other. Sats. My job was gone. I knew that before anyone said it. Daniel stepped close enough that only Vivian and I could hear him clearly. "Think carefully," he said. "You can make this ugly, or you can let this be handled privately." Vivian turned toward him. Handled. He ignored the word. "Mister, Price has been loyal to this estate. I respect that. We can arrange a generous severance, a recommendation, school assistance for his niece." His eyes stayed on me, enough to make sure he never has to worry about rent again. That last part found the weak place in me. I thought about Sage's shoes, the dental bill, the cracked mirror over our sink, the way she had asked if I wanted her because I had been so busy proving love with groceries that I forgot to say it with words. For a few seconds, I didn't know what I would do. Then I looked at Lily. She was standing alone in a room full of adults who had more money, more education, more power, and somehow she was the only one who had told the plain truth. I folded the checklist once along its old crease and set it on the table beside the screw. "No," I said. Daniel's face tightened. "No." I looked at Vivian then. I wasn't standing between her and danger. I was standing where a father should have been. The room stayed quiet. Vivian's hand went to her mouth, but she didn't cry. Not then. She just looked at Lily like she was seeing all the fear her daughter had carried politely. Daniel lowered his voice. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. Maybe he meant the company, maybe he meant the engagement, maybe he meant the beautiful future he had built in his head and dressed up as protection." I said, "I know what I'm not selling." That was all. Vivian picked up the relay printout. Her fingers trembled once, then steadied. "Call security," she said. Daniel blinked. "Vivian." She didn't look at him. Not estate security, police. Lily came to my side then, not behind me this time, beside me. And I understood something I should have understood sooner. Silence can look like dignity from the outside, but sometimes it is just fear that learned good manners. Tell me honestly, what would you have done? Would you have taken the money or risked everything for a truth nobody wanted to hear? By the time the police arrived, Daniel was still standing in the ballroom, but nobody was standing with him. Police did not drag Daniel out in handcuffs while everyone gasped. Real life is quieter than that. They took statements first. They photographed the latch, collected the screw, copied the relay log, and asked Vivian for permission to review the estate security system. Daniel kept saying this was a misunderstanding. Then he said he had only been trying to protect Lily from unhealthy attachments. Then he said Vivian's household had no discipline before he arrived. Every sentence made Vivian stand a little farther from him. Lily sat on the lowest stair with both hands wrapped around her greenhouse journal. I noticed the same folded paper edge sticking from the back, and for the first time, I understood those pencil marks had not been random. She had been keeping track because nobody had asked the right questions. Vivian walked over to her daughter and knelt in front of her. Not CEO-like, not polished, just a mother with one knee on a marble floor. "Baby," she said, "why didn't you tell me?" Lily looked at Daniel, then at me. "I tried," she whispered, "but everybody said he was nice." Vivian closed her eyes. That was the moment that hurt more than Daniel's lies. Because children do try, They try with silence. They try with stomach aches. They try by standing closer to the person who makes them feel safe. Adults just prefer clean sentences. Vivian reached for Lily's hand, but she waited until Lily took hers first. Then Lily pointed at me again, softer this time. "Mister, Nate didn't make me choose him," she said. "He just never made me feel bad for being scared." Nobody in that room laughed. Nobody corrected her. Daniel's attorney arrived before sunset. By then, Vivian had already removed Daniel from the estate access list, canceled the commitment announcement, and turned over 3 years of internal household records for review. There would be consequences, but not the movie kind. Contracts ended. Reputations cracked. Board members stopped returning Daniel's calls. People who once praised his stability began using words like concern and pattern. Vivian found me outside the greenhouse after the police left. For a moment, she looked at the service door instead of at me. The same door I had stood beside the night Lily pointed. "I repeated his words to you," she said. I didn't answer right away. She swallowed. "About boundaries." "Yes, ma'am." Her face tightened, but she accepted it. "I'm sorry, Mr. Price." It was not a speech. That made it better. Sage came by later that evening because I had forgotten to pick her up on time, and my neighbor had driven her over. She stood beside Lily at the greenhouse bench, both girls looking at the little journal like it had become evidence and treasure at the same time. Lily handed Sage a packet of basil seeds. Sage looked at me, then at Lily. "Still holds," she said. And somehow, that was enough. Has one small thing ever changed the direction of your life? A note, a date, a detail nobody else noticed? Tell me below. That night, I walked back to my truck with the folded checklist in my pocket, and for the first time all week, nobody asked me to use the service exit. 2 months later, the west greenhouse door had a new latch, a new camera, and a small brass plate Vivian ordered without asking me first. It read, "Children are believed here." I didn't know how I felt about that plate. Part of me liked it. Part of me wished nobody needed to be reminded. Daniel's case moved through channels I did not fully understand. Lawyers, statements, reviews, things rich families handle behind doors with better wood than mine. Vivian told me enough to know he would not be near Lily again, and I decided enough was enough. Some endings don't need every drawer opened. I kept working at the estate, but not the same way. Vivian stopped calling me Mr. Price when nobody else was around. Sometimes she called me Nathaniel. Sometimes she almost said something more, then didn't. I let that stay unfinished. Lily came back to the greenhouse slowly. At first, she stood near the door, then near the bench. Then one Saturday, she asked if Sage could visit and help plant basil. Sage arrived with her crookedly taped gardening journal under one arm and a paper bag of seeds in the other. She had written labels in careful marker: basil, mint, marigold, try again. That last one was my favorite. The folded maintenance checklist stayed in a frame beside the supply cabinet, not because it was pretty. It wasn't. It was stained, creased, and ugly with fear. But Lily asked if it could stay where adults would have to see it. So we left it there. One evening, I found Sage and Lily watering seedlings together while Vivian stood outside the glass, watching without interrupting. The sun was low over the savanna oaks, turning the greenhouse gold. Sage handed Lily the watering can and said, "Not too much. Roots need air, too." I smiled at that. Quiet pride doesn't make noise. It just stands there with dirt on its boots and realizes something you planted is still alive. Later, Sage walked with me to the truck. "Uncle Nate, Yeah, I knew you wanted me, she said. I stopped beside the driver's door. She didn't look at me, just climbed in and buckled her seatbelt like she hadn't handed me back a piece of myself. I stood there a second longer than necessary. The lesson I carried from all of it was simple. Being trusted by a child is not a compliment. It is a responsibility. Vivian and I never did define what came next. Maybe there was nothing to define. Maybe there was. Sometimes she still paused by the greenhouse door like she wanted to ask me something that had nothing to do with maintenance. I never pushed. That evening, I drove home with Sage humming beside me, basil seeds in the cup holder, and the smell of wet soil still caught in my sleeves. If this story stayed with you, I want to hear from you. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like the decision had already been made before you opened your mouth? Have you ever protected someone quietly and wondered if anybody would ever know, or maybe one small detail, a note, a date, a child's sentence changed everything? Tell me about it in the comments. Your story matters. And if stories about fathers, dignity, and the quiet strength nobody photographs mean something to you, like this video and subscribe. Until next time, take care of your people. They're watching everything you do.